Going for two, kickers are extra, I give them the boot. Ooh, going for two, sit back, relax while I grab me a brew. Ooh, now I'm reclining while putting my time and I'm ready to go. My spine is aligning and much my lineups, my bank account grow. I am so rich, but knowledge is all that I'm leaving it with. Ooh, listen to this, multiple options, how far can I get? Ooh, DFS Dynasty redraft tonight, I'm not finishing last. I'm finishing past any and all, I am looking to last. What else? This spot is popping and I am so locked in and only opening the door when it is opportunity knocking. And all of these spots keep on talking and talking. So what are we talking? What kind of alignment? And running it deep, even players forgotten or came from the bottom or hitting that top end. And this spot is popping, yeah, this spot is popping. And woo! This is the armchair, yeah. Put up your arms, yeah. Sound the alarm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo!
What is going on, guys, and welcome to the RSO 2023 Personal League Podcast. I am your host, Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Of course, we're here tonight to break down your league. I believe this is at least the second year, if not the third year we've done this league before. And we brought our expert, Kyle, over here, who'll meet here in a second. But first up, we'll meet the panel. Of course, we got Ryan here tonight, Mr. Ryan Steerfoss. He is the co-host of the Armchair Fantasy Show right here on this network. He's also the co-host of the Dynasty Big Board, and you can follow him on Twitter at Foss534. What's up, Ryan?
Oh, it never gets old having you introduce me. I feel fancy.
Our regular show, you don't get the full introduction. Ryan's here.
It's garbage. And by the way, with Kyle's knowledge of salary caps league, can we start calling him the Canadian calculator?
Canadian calculator. I like it. Sounds like a new Twitter handle for me.
That's my favorite nickname I've ever had, and I've been referred to as Millhouse a lot, so that takes the cake for sure.
Good stuff. All right, that voice you hear is Mr. Kyle Senra. He is the host of the 2-Point Conversion Monday night pregame show during the season, and you can follow him on Twitter at Senra Says. What's up, Kyle?
Hi. Super pumped, not just because of that awesome music that always gets me pumped. Good job, Gabe. But I love PLPs and I love RSO. So to combine both, that's 6 letters all in a sequence. Tell me that. Yeah, perfect. I'm all in. I believe they're going for 2 years in a row now that they've gone to us for this. So super happy to help this league out. And I guess for Foss, this is the same bat time, same bat channel. Wednesday 9:30, right? Like this almost is like a regular armchair, just a little fancier.
It's very weird. No, it's like not my. I feel like I'm off, but I'm working extra.
All right, guys, we do have some bad news though. The Going for Two Personal League podcast have sold out for 2023. But if you order your PLP for next year, you can get 20% off with our promo code EarlyBird24. Just visit goingfor2.com/PLP. Use promo code EarlyBird24 to save 20%. And I will tell you, they are selling out already. We've already sold out the entire month of July already. So please, if you want to get one of these, jump in. Again, it's goingfor2.com/PLP. Save 20%, which amounts to about $7 a person in a 12-man league. So it's definitely worth it if you want to get one of these done. Again, goingfor2.com/PLP. EarlyBird24 is the promo code. All right, y'all know how this goes. We're going to break down your teams 12 through 1. We've ranked your teams, created a consensus ranking. We actually had an extra ranker that unfortunately could not make the show tonight, Dan, but we kept his rankings in there as part of our consensus. So we'll count them down 12 to 1. And when we get to the team that these guys were experts of, they will break them down, strengths, weaknesses, and then we'll go to Kyle for all the contract stuff because he's kind of the contract expert. But let's go ahead and jump right into it here. Get to team number 12.
Number 12.
All right, number 12 team ranked as high as 11 and as low as 12, and it is BL Relax. And Kyle, this is your team. Take it away.
Yeah, so right off the bat, Jeff, you and I both ranked them at 12, though it wasn't a unanimous selection, so I guess a little positivity there. But to me, it was the first thing that stood out was the potential of not having a starting quarterback next year. They do have Ryan Tannehill, Zach Wilson, and Hendon Hooker all under contract. But, that could there's a chance none of them are starting next year, frankly. I mean, there's a slim chance all 3 could be starters, so maybe the outlook is a little better. But for now, a year with Aaron Rodgers and Ryan Tannehill as a quarterback duo is probably underwhelming too relative to the rest of the league. So from from a future outlook, but also from a this year outlook. Nice to have the Rodgers-Wilson handcuff, I guess. And yeah, I suppose a theme I'll talk about as well is knowing that when this league scheduled their PLP, they'll likely make fifth-year option decisions on next year's rookie class that comes up, so the 2021 rookies. And Zach Wilson's part of that. I looked through the contracts. I believe he was the 109 in the rookie draft that year, if I had everything correctly. And I don't know, beyond 2024, maybe that's how you get that extra quarterback year. Do you guys think in 2025, when that fifth-year option year would have to be, do you think Zach Wilson's starting? That was like the first thing that I had decision-wise.
I mean, how he's going to get in the NFL.
Nah, the future Jets quarterback is not on the Jets.
Yeah, save whatever money you would use on that to get another starter that's established at that point. Was my thoughts as well. Would be that he's not someone and knowing this league, like it doesn't seem like a lot of teams overuse the fifth-year options. I remember last year, David Montgomery got one, and Kyler Murray. I noticed that in this year's auction, he was on that fifth-year option. So, it seems like not a ton of players get them. And I don't think Zach Wilson would be the good quality player. Like you're almost either like for sure saying yes or no. I'll go to Doc, my co-host on Monday night, when he talks about trades. Like if you accept a trade, it's either a hell yes or it's a no. If I'm not entirely convinced that this is the right move, I'm not hitting accept. And that would be the same thing, I think, for a fifth-year option. If you have any doubts about it, you probably shouldn't do it. So Zach, I think, poses enough doubts because you have to do that before next season, right? You have to make that decision, I think, before next year's auction.
Right.
So I think, that's a big reason why I put them low, but I guess the advantage is they have so much cap space next year that they could be going into auctions. I know we'll talk about some quarterbacks that are in the final years of their deals, and with this league not having a franchise tag means a lot of good players in the auction. So having cap space is key, and they do free up a lot. They've got like Aaron Jones and Keenan Allen, George Kittle, all on expiring contracts. So if got to just let all those guys walk in free agency and not bid them up and use all that money instead to bid up quarterbacks, then that's, I think, the priority going forward. But it still feels like if you can make trades and get a QB upgrade this year, that could be in play. But to get significant upgrades, you probably have to get to the auction. I mean, still try and make offers, although I don't know which pieces would be those offers. I think Jerry Jeudy and Tank Dell, two receivers, especially Tank Dell, although not on a rookie contract. I noticed that it seems like he left the rookie draft unclaimed, and then in the free agency auction, I guess more recently with all this hype, that sometimes happens, right? Those we see in the NFL too. The UDFAs sometimes make more than fifth rounders, and I've noticed that in my own RSO leagues as well. I think I did that with Ty Chandler last year, where he went into the no one drafted him, but I'll pay up a little more than a fourth round rookie contract to get him, even though I could have just taken him in the fourth round. But I would Hassan Haskins. Let's do that instead. Yeah, no, not so good. I think he's still cheap enough, though. I think it's like average around $5 million a year, I think, if I calculated that correctly. So that could be a cheap option. Jerry Jeudy, those might be the pieces as well as draft picks to be able to get that quarterback upgrade now. But I don't know how much. I'm seeing Trenton Laws show up. Apparently the QB fifth-year option will be like $39 million. So definitely don't spend that on Zach Wilson.
Yeah, definitely not.
Save that money for the auction, because that might be how this team addresses quarterback, and maybe it's a bit of a struggle this year. Maybe Rodgers, Tannehill is enough to get them into the playoffs too.
Yeah, so I had this team ranked at 12, and I'm not looking at it from contract standpoint because I don't quite understand it the way Kyle does. But just from a fantasy perspective, this team was a little rough. I mean, at least currently on the sheet that I have, Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon are both your starting running backs. You got a couple guys on the bench, I guess you could put in, like Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, Elijah Mitchell, all guys that could potentially be starters. But the fact that you got both premier running backs, that doesn't really help your case. Receivers are pretty decent, which is why I think I debated on putting this one a little bit higher. But you got Jeudy and Allen. George Kittle's a nice piece to have. I think Gabe Davis is sort of a post-hype sleeper. I think he can have a good season this year. But overall, I think this team is in sort of a rebuild mode. Like you mentioned, not picking up the fifth-year option on Zach Wilson will definitely help this team. There's no way in hell I would pick up that fifth-year option unless something dramatically changes in the next year. which I don't see happening either.
Uh,
Ryan,
just
yeah,
a-
go ahead.
Sorry, one last thing I could add in with the contracts. I noticed running back depth in general, this team could use more, and they have 4 wide receivers on minimum contracts, meaning if you cut them, there's no dead cap at all counting against them. So they're the easiest players to cut. Devontae Parker, Isaiah Hodgins, McCole Hardman, and Corey Davis, who retired. So I think Corey Davis is an obvious cut, but I would consider cutting all 4, potentially up to all 4, to add running backs. So if there's any good running backs on the waiver wire, maybe even just, take, the 2 best players you want to invest in of those 4, keep them, cut 2 of them, add 2 running backs. That at least helps that depth a little more too.
Yeah, good call. Anything you want to chime here, Ryan? You had them at 11, not 12. I know it's splitting hairs here, but is there a reason you like this team better?
There's a couple upside players on it compared to the other one, with like Judy, Keenan Allen, Kittle, and one of the Green Bay backs. I just think the difference between that and Travis Law is. Can I just dive into theirs because that's kind of where the difference is?
Yeah, we can go ahead and get there. Let me just hit the drop though.
Oh, sorry.
Number 11.
So yeah, we'll go ahead and Travis Laws is the number 11 team, also ranked as high as 11 and as low as 12. These teams actually both were tied 11 and a half each, and I just the tiebreaker was my ranking, so I had them at 11, so they ended up being the 11 team.
See, I thought the tie breaking was Dan wasn't on the show, so his ranking doesn't count.
Doesn't count. Fair.
But no, the reason I had that 112 instead of 11 is essentially just the team build in general and lack of high-end players. Like Bryce Young and Laporta are really young upside players. Your ones who you have upside or think are Rashee Wright, Tank Bigsby, and they're more dart throws and everything, so they're still a struggle to get significant playing time. We're more worried about them being wide receiver 2s, running back 2s, if we're lucky, not do they have a chance to be an elite player. There's a lot of just bench cloggers on the bench with older quarterbacks, running backs like Chris Evans. I hate to say Son Haskins, but like there's just a lot of bench clogging, a lot of just wasted team when there should be there's not enough upside. I don't see the draft pick situation here, which may make a difference. But man, there's a lot of guys who are just cut worthy, and it's just outside of Bryce Young and Russ, there's not a lot I like who's going to be starting. Even Laporta, like he should be good right away, but I mean it doesn't matter right now at this point in this team, anyways. But it's still a tight end, and it makes a struggle. Isaiah Pacheco, we're kind of at his ceiling. And I see the comment about the 324 first rounders.
Yeah, that might make me raise the team a little bit.
Which that's a great piece. And honestly, as the season goes on, and say you guys do get hot who aren't those like young centerpieces, just start moving them and accumulating more picks. Russ Wilson and Pacheco, like guys who have playable upside in a close future. Get rid of them when people are desperate.
Yeah, and I was going to go to, we alluded to Russell Wilson pre-show, Kyle did, in the contract that he has. And Kyle, you want to talk about that a little bit? Yeah,
so one of the reasons I debated putting Travis Laws at 12 and not 11 was the Russell Wilson contract. It's if I'm correct with my calculations, it's like the 4th highest cap hit average for any of the contracts. It's like super close to Mahomes and Allen and Lamar Jackson. I believe Lamar Jackson's the highest. And so it's 3 years of like over 60 million. So, if you're getting Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, QB1 potential production, that you can justify that on. But I think Russell Wilson, it's a little much. I would say, not to feel too bad for Travis Laws, because $1 billion organization literally made the same mistake, and the Broncos extended Russell Wilson unnecessarily last year. I mean, this seemed based on the contract, looks like he was a free agent last year, and this was just a contract signed in the auction. So that's not as bad as what Denver did, because they didn't need to extend him, and they gave him like 5 years. So Denver feels much worse about that than Travis Laws. But yeah, I think to Ryan's point, like a few things Ryan said. One I really liked was the clogger thing, just because I can touch on that really quick. There are players you would like to cut, but there's only one player on a minimum contract, or two, sorry, Colt McCoy and Chris Evans. And so they can be cut for free, but anyone else that you cut will still have dead cap counted against. And, some of these contracts are pretty low, like cutting the rookie contract, especially the low end. Like I did that in my league this year. I cut Hassan Haskins on a rookie contract. I've got to eat 3 years of some dead cap, but I think I ate the whole contract this year and then $500,000 in dead cap each of the next 2 years. So it's not too big a deal. Like the rookie contract, especially the fourth rounders, are so cheap that you'll take whatever the dead cap is just to free up the roster spot. And that might be the case for a guy like Hassan Haskins. But I could get Ryan's point of on the lack of upside at receiver. Like I wouldn't be shocked if KJ Osborne leads this receiving core in fantasy points. Then the team we just did, BL Relax, probably name like 5 guys that could finish ahead of KJ Osborne pretty easily. So I could see from that point. But I think the reason I did end up ranking them higher is because of Bryce Young. Having that rookie quarterback at least gives that one asset that BL Relax didn't have. Maybe I'm centering too much on the top asset. But they've got, unfortunately, picked up the 5th-year option on Kyler Murray. So it's pretty expensive this year for a year. You might not get much out of him. And then he's a free agent next year and he's gone. So it's a little unfortunate as well in that situation. We paying so much to Wilson and Murray and not really getting the production on that. I think hamstrung enough to where they probably couldn't go too heavy in on other positions in the auction. And that's why they might be starting both Pacheco and McKinnon on that Thursday night game, whatever running back scores touchdowns. But then KJ Osborne and Zay Jones. Oh no, you know what? Just throw all the Chiefs in. Sky Moore, Rasheed Rice, Pacheco, McKinnon. They're playing the Lions. They'll probably put up 60 points on them, honestly.
That was one of my other issues I had with the team, was so many repetitive players on the same team. Like you have the 2 Chiefs receivers plus McKinnon. You have 2 Bengals running backs, and not the starter. Probably the second string. That's also another issue. Like they're just repeating back end players hoping one hits.
And that wouldn't be so bad if the next best players, other than because seriously, those might be the best 2 starting options are Pacheco and McKinnon at running back, as opposed to Samaje Perine or Rashad Penny, right? Like if you had other running backs and you could use them as one of them will be in the lineup and out, and I can choose between them or handcuff them, and one guy's out, then I play them. That might make more sense. But I mean, maybe they want to build the team that way, though, not having to choose between them, play them both every week, and whatever happens. But I think the one thing I will say, I find tight ends a little overrated in formats. The extra half PPR, especially, I don't think that adds too much. But I do love the way that they've addressed it with 3 rookie contracts at tight end. Let's spend as little as we can, but still get solid players and solid assets that are tradable. And I think Freiermuth, Laporta, Schoonmaker on rookie contracts, all of them have enough hype that if ever you need to bail out of a build, I think those are maybe some of the most liquid assets on this team, where you can trade them almost like you could draft picks because of the tight end premium. So that is the one advantage this team has, is you could trade really any of the 3 of them at 3 different price ranges for whatever players you're trying to target.
Good point. One question I want to ask you, Kyle, because you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but with Kyler Murray, they would have had to decide on the 5th-year option last year, right?
I think they decided the 5th-year options before we even did their PLP last year, because I remember looking at the prices and seeing David Montgomery, it looks like he had a 5th-year option picked up. I think it was him, and I even remember debating should DK Metcalf be in that situation? And I noticed he was in the auction this year, so that team was either past the deadline when we did our PLP, or they decided not to put the 5th-year option on Metcalf. But this is, of course, having decided this before the injury. That's why I said it wasn't a bad move. More unfortunate just because of the injury. You wouldn't have known. I think I would have probably advised to pick up the 5th-year option on him, honestly. Just get that quarterback, especially at that point, not knowing they would have had Bryce Young on their team. Yeah, not knowing he would have had that rookie contract. I think, but even before the NFL draft, so even long before they do their auction as well. So it's not that's an unfortunate result. The worst move you can make is overpay players, not usually to pick up overpay on multi-years. The 1-year cap hit, that's not usually a mistake. It's more just bad luck in this case.
Gotcha. All right, let's get to number 10.
Number 10.
Number 10 team ranked as high as 8 and as low as 10. It is Nick Dillon. And Ryan, this is your team.
Okay. So Nick has some really nice young pieces on his team to build around with like CJ Stroud, Christian Watson, George Pickens. He has the upside there. Even Sam Howell, who's got the starting job now. Like, there's young upside players to like. And the issue is there's no elite players on the team. And the mix of young and old kind of has you dabbling in that mediocrity where you're not getting high draft picks and setting yourself up for failure. Like, this is it doesn't have to be a full rebuild because you do have some young good pieces. I think Pickens has wide receiver 1 potential in the future. I think you can see Christian Watson as a perennial wide receiver too. Like, there's a lot to like. Even Schultz could be a high end tight end, being there's a lack of targets there. But is this team good enough to contend for a championship this year? Probably not. And like with the running backs and depth at wide receiver, it leaves a lot to ask for. But there's a huge opportunities here for trades, even if they have bigger contracts or not. I'm trying to catch up on the contracts as I go. But like, looks like Kirk Cousins is only 73. Isn't that bad for quarterback on there?
Especially for over 3 years. Yeah, that like, I think you'd be hard pressed to trade Carr. Just on the 2-year contract, big cap hits both years, not quite to Russell Wilson. In fact, I think if you combine Kirk and Carr's cap hit, you essentially get Russell Wilson. So that puts that into context. It doesn't seem too bad. But yeah, I would imagine between those two older guys, you're more likely to be able to trade Cousin, smaller cap hit, and extra year on the contract. Plus, frankly, like, I have Cousins ranked higher in my dynasty rankings. I think all 3 of us do, which you can go check all our rankings at goingfor2.com, by the way. So, like, I think, yeah, if you're going to trade one of those quarterbacks, it's probably Cousins because that's the one that'll have more appetite from folks. Now, do people want to go a 3-year contract on Cousins not knowing what his NFL future is because he's only on a 1-year deal in the NFL? So
Kirk Cousins is good enough to be a starter for a while.
Oh, I think so too, but you got to convince the league mates of that, right? Like, anyone who believes that will probably be willing to pay the price, but some people might not. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe someone might trade for Carr, but you're probably not getting, because the contract's so bad. I know that tends to happen in our leagues. Okay, bad contracts. You're paying to get rid of it. Maybe that might not be the case with a quarterback, but it still might. You're not going to get much for it because the contract's so bad.
Yeah, there's one thing to note too that was put in the chat just now. To get the 101, you actually have to win the tournament of the team 7 through 12. So tanking is not really something you want to do because if you're not good enough to get into the playoffs, you want to be at least good enough to beat the rest of the teams in that tournament so you can get the 101. So it makes it a little bit of an interesting twist there.
This year picking 104 wouldn't have been too bad. You know, if you couldn't get 101, you're at least guaranteed a quarterback. Like, okay, if you couldn't get Bijan, at least the quarterback. But other years, 104 is not so great. So even missing the playoffs doesn't guarantee you that stud asset. Sometimes there's only 3 players, and you miss out on those top 3, you're done.
You'll be on all right shape next year with the quarterback class. Yeah, I mean, if you could, either way, you don't need 4 starting quarterbacks right now when you could fill out some other roster spots. Like, if you could get another starting caliber player to replace David Montgomery or Alec Pierce and just slide either Howell or Carr in the starting spot, you're in much better shape come that tournament time. I think Jamal Williams has upside this year. He's real sneaky. Mm-hmm. And even Hayden Hurst at tight end as your number 2 tight end isn't bad with Carolina having, again, another team with lack of targets. There's some other dead weight, but like I said, but there's some stuff to like, and I think you can really build on this team. But I just need a couple moves to just shed some fat.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And I agree. That's the one thing I looked at this team. I was like, there's nobody that you get really excited about. There's a couple guys that have the potential to be exciting. Like, I love George Pickens. He's not to the elite level yet. I think he could potentially get there. Same thing with Christian Watson. There's a chance he might get there. But You got some of the most boring running backs, that are in the game right now. David Montgomery and Alexander Madison are pretty much sort of the run of the mill. Dalton Schultz probably can end up being a top 12 tight end, but he's probably more the top. He's probably the 12th, if that. He's not super exciting. He's not going to hit that, the top 3 echelon there. So it's sort of a very average across the board lineup, I think. And I think you're right, Ryan. Like trying to get somebody to fill in for David Montgomery or Alec Pierce is definitely something that you want to do. And I see in the chat too that he also has 2 first-round picks. So again, that also helps. In a situation like this, if you can get a good top first-round pick to add to what you already have here with this good talent, it's average, but it's not it's not terrible. I think this team can be turned around pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because it's almost the same situation as the last team. The best asset is probably the rookie quarterback. In this case, it's CJ Stroud. Last team was Bryce Young with Travis Laws.
Agreed.
For Nick Dillon, I think his best asset is CJ Stroud, and I suppose that makes almost every of the 3 other quarterbacks tradable, the 3 other starters. And I wonder if Sam Howell would be a good flip early in the season when he's getting starts. He's on a rookie contract, so he'll also be cheap to move. So, because the problem with Kirk Cousins is some teams that might want him might not be able to afford him, and they would have to give up assets back that aren't necessarily helping you win, but you're taking on because of the cap hit to equal things out. Whereas with Sam Howell, you'll be able to move him pretty easily without having to take contracts back because he's so cheap.
If Sam Howell has a good week 1 against the Cardinals, which should be a terrible.
That's true.
Yeah, that McLaurin now, which hurts.
Yeah, and you would break up the stack, and I guess that was my next point to make was the tight end situation. Having the 2 tight ends on 2-year contracts, both with rookie quarterbacks, Dalton Schultz and Hayden Hurst, right? They're tied to these rookie QBs. And I kind of like how sneaky they were able to get Jake Ferguson on for a minimum contract. I would try and move one of the multi-year contract tight ends. And looking at the big difference in cap hit, it's about 3 times more for Schultz than Hurst. Hurst is probably the one you want to move. And I just predict Schultz will do better anyway. And you have the stack of Schultz and Stroud. So maybe you want to build it around that stack. I'd look to try and move Hayden Hurst. I know there's one team in particular we'll get to eventually that the starting tight end is that's a big question mark. So that they would be the team, and I respect the way it's built, but that would be the team in theory that should want to trade for tight end. Maybe by the way they've built their team, they're indicating that they're not going to trade for a tight end though because it's built that way. So that'll get to a little bit later, but there might be teams looking for. There's a few injuries in Carolina, right? Maybe Hayden Hurst gets some extra targets week 1, week 2, and sell them off of that. But yeah, Sam Howell, Hayden Hurst might be 2 targets early in the season. That could.
I don't hate selling the McLaurin Howell stack either.
Yep.
Because McLaurin is 28.
Yeah.
And you got 3 years left 3 years left on it.
And outside of the 2 quarterbacks and Schultz, it looks like McLaurin's the 4th highest cap hit on this team, I believe. So, that could be a guy you move to help free up future cap space. He's still young. Okay, people see 3-year contract, not too expensive. You're paying for a good, talented player, so that might also be able to net something.
Good point. All right, let's get to number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9 team ranked as high as 8 and as low as 9. It is Bobby Trees. And Kyle, this is your squad.
Yeah, so Bobby Trees. I guess the one thing is, okay, you've got Saquon Barkley locked up for 3 years, but I think it's around or just over $40 million per year averaged out. It'll be the RSO contracts will always escalate. It'll always be more expensive the final year. So it's probably a little under 40 this year. But yeah, it's great to have a good player locked up, but that could also cause potential problems in the future. So that might be a contract where, in 2025, you're cutting him before the auction that final year to save the 20 million or whatever you would be saving, and hope to win him back for that or use that somewhere else. But I guess for now, just riding with Barkley, because it's such a big cap hit, you're probably not going to be able to trade him. So it's the bet on Barkley for these next 3 years, which could be a good bet. Like he might smash over these next 3 years with the Giants this year, and whoever he's with next year might be great seasons. So it does, you got the potential RB1 overall, certainly a guy with top 5 potential anchoring the team. Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, and Kenny Pickett all for, I think, the next 3 years each. Actually, looks like Dak looks like the Dak was just one in the auction this year. So they've also got their QB situation lined up for the next 3 seasons entirely with a trio of quarterbacks. Don't love Jordan Love's cap hit. It's going to be basically what the Packers are paying him, like about $20 million next year, but only he's got it stretched over 3 years. So that is a bit of a commitment for a guy we haven't seen. Honestly, if he flames out and you can use the money elsewhere, maybe he's even cuttable next year, to be honest. But you probably at least get 2 years of starts out of him. But yeah, I think that the question, especially with the big investment on Barkley, I think 5th-year option on Travis Etienne. I think that would be that was one of the first things that stood out to me is like that decision. Because I think there's a few players where you're for sure picking up the 5th-year option, and then guys like Zach Wilson where you're for sure not. I think Etienne's just on the cusp there. Again, especially like I would say having the big cap hit on Barkley already would make me as an argument to not do it because you've already invested that into a running back. You want to invest into 2 running backs fairly high like that. I'm not sure exactly I know the QB 5th-year option was 36, but that will depend on position. So I'd imagine the running back one's a little less. There aren't the $60 million guys propping that contract up. Although Barkley, unfortunately, probably does hurt that and increases that 5th-year option for you. So what do you guys think? 5th-year option on Travis Etienne? Let's say it's around $30 million.
I'll let you go first, Ryan, on this one. I know you like Etienne, but I don't know how much you like him.
I mean, it depends on. I don't know how much cap space they'd have left on it after that, or what the pick situation is. I like the idea of keeping him that extra year if you think you can compete. Like I'd see how the season. I wouldn't just make that decision now.
Yeah,
I'd make it.
Yeah, you definitely don't have to.
If
you actually can't make that decision now.
Well, no, but like
format, but yeah.
Like you pre-make that decision, like in your head, you make that decision.
I mean, we're talking about it right now. I'm bringing it up, so yeah.
Right. If you finish in the top 3 or 4 next year, you're gonna want to try to keep what you have together. I think that's where it is because this team has enough upside, and a couple things land right or hit. It's not bad. It's not a bad squad. Like it's really not. Like we end up getting a Kareem Hunt landing spot where he ends up being somewhere we get significant playing time. Odell ends up doing well in Baltimore with the new system. Jalen Hyatt balls out. Like there's some stuff to really look forward to. I'm not bringing up like the starters. I think Jordan Addison could be a superstar in the league. Like there's a lot to like, man. It's just I think I'd play that 5th-year contract on by a year, seeing how the season goes, because there's a few ways it could go. Dak Prescott gets back to Dak Prescott. You're cooking with gasoline.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and $25 million. It should be close to being affordable. Maybe you have to move a contract to get rid of that, but like I see, like the David Njoku contract will be up at that point, so that won't be counting on the cap. I thought I saw another one that would. I guess the running backs like Zeke and Hunt they'll both be off the books by then. So, that might mean that 2025 year, this team isn't so even next year, this team might not be too big on the auction. So again, I think picks might be a big factor here, being the best way to acquire players or saving those picks and drafting the rookies. Cause I guess there's a few guys on rookie contracts, Kenny Pickett, Zamir White, Jordan Addison, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman. So a few players, but it seems like the core of this team is a lot of players that are bigger contracts, a few minimum contract players. I noticed they have both Jets running backs, Michael Carter, Israel Abanikanda, but either of them can be cut at any point. And I know like we wouldn't really be cutting Abanikanda in dynasty leagues because, okay, he's a young rookie with like, okay, we could have him for years. But again, in this situation, you only have him for 1 year. So like, I look at that as, those might be, I don't know, would you like think of, the bet on Michael Carter and Abanikanda as just 1 year bets? Who would you rather have for 1 year?
Probably Abanikanda, honestly.
Oh, okay.
Carter, I think, has seen his better days. He's had his opportunity. Abanikanda has that unknown element to his game.
I was going to say Carter because I get the sense that, especially early, he might be factoring on the field more with Dalvin Cook before Breece Hall gets there. But now it seems like Breece Hall might even play week 1. So honestly, you might just cut both. But yeah, okay. So we prioritize a little differently.
I was going to say cut both.
Cut both.
I would say cut both. You're looking
And
at
you
third,
could
fourth
also
string running backs.
release Cordarrelle Patterson pretty cheap. So like that opens up 3 roster spots. Maybe you just fill with 3 other running backs. To be honest, maybe you're just looking for guys like Terrace Marshall's on a minimum contract too. Like he'd be someone I'd probably cut him first to add another running back to that room. Keep Carter.
Yeah, he's definitely cuttable at this point, I think.
I'd try and
Rashid
trade
Shaheed,
David
too.
Njoku as well. It might be tough because of bigger cap hit. Look around. I think the average is like almost 18 million per year. It's not the most expensive. I think Schultz was a bit higher, but like it's not like I think Hayden Hurst would be more movable because it's like even less than half of what Njoku's contract is. But if you could move him, that could be something that helps free up again the cap space to at least do something in the auction next year. Otherwise, I guess the unfortunate thing about this team is it doesn't look like they have too much cap space to get too much better than what they are now. Whereas some of these other teams, like some of the teams we just talked about, like especially the Jeff team we ranked last, they will have so much cap space that team could look a lot better and a lot different a year from now if we were to redo this PLP again, which I certainly hope so. I love doing this.
All right, let's get to number 8.
Number 8.
Number 8 team was ranked as high as 8 and as low as 10, and it is Catalina Wine Mixon. And Ryan, this is your squad here.
Now that I've been a little bit more educated on how these rookie contracts get from listening to Cal, I like this team, I think, more than I originally did because you have these young assets at wide receiver. Chris Olave's on his rookie deal, still so young. Jackson Smith and Jigba, again, rookie, should be super. Dalton Kincaid has tight end 1 potential immediately. There's some really, really good young pieces. You have your franchise quarterback. Dobbins should be back to normal this year. Him and Mixon isn't a bad combination. Those receivers, tight end. I don't love starting 2 tight ends with him and Waller, but I think Waller is self-sustainable this year in that offense. Jeff is much more of an naive person than I am. But the fact is he can hit there, and he played well with Brock Purdy. So this is the first starting lineup that we've seen so far. I'm pretty confident with. Even Desmond Ridder, who everybody's kind of poo-pooing this offseason, he has rushing upside. He has 2 really good weapons and an unbelievable running game, which means his life should be easy to play action. He'll have red zone rushing opportunity, especially if he's running zone reads with Bijan. He's a lot more solid as you can get. You got young players on your bench, like also rookie deals with Jaden Reed, who has a ton of upside, who's flashed for Green Bay this offseason. Roshan Johnson, who, if you've listened to any Going for Two podcast, is just beloved. I kind of like this team. I really like. There's a lot of good pieces on it. You have some truly just roster cloggers at the bottom, but who cares at this point? Like, they're not terrible ones. Khalil Herbert has upside, who's somebody you can move during the season if he ends up being the running back there. But either way, you're kind of protected there with Roshan. This isn't a bad team. I don't know if it's a championship contender right away, but it has the makings of being one with a move or 2.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And I had this team ranked at number 8, the highest of the group. And you look at those running backs on the bench, and they're pretty much all an injury away from being starters. You got Keontae Ingram, who's behind James Conner, Chuba Hubbard. Khalil Herbert is the starter in Chicago, at least as of right now. Tajay Spears, and then if Khalil Herbert that's a starter, then you got Roshan Johnson there. All viable players, all on the bench. You mentioned the running backs he has starting with J.K. Dobbins, Joe Mixon. He's got the young receivers. He's got a young tight end. He's got a lot to go going for him here. I'm curious, Kyle, to what your thoughts are on this team.
Yeah, I between them and Bobby Trees, I think I ended up having Bobby Trees at 8 and this team at 9. And I think it was the Barkley contract, which I felt could be problematic. I weighed that against the Darren Waller contract, which is less average cap hit than Barkley, but there's also an extra year on that. And Waller's age, and I know usually tight ends could go a little longer than, say, running backs. I still worry about that. And especially with Kincaid, you're essentially going to if Kincaid hits, the potential value you have with Kincaid on a rookie deal is kind of wasted on how much money you're spending on Waller. He's going to be tough to trade probably because of how long his contract is. So unless you can find a good way to get off of him, it'd be probably tough to move, and you're probably selling at such, like, you're almost giving him away, or that might be a bad enough contract where someone would send me a fourth and I'll take him off of you. But that's a lot of points you're losing this year, right? So, but like this would also be the time you probably get the most value out of it because he's producing the best. So that does leave in a bit of a tricky situation, I think. And Dobbins mix in those lead running backs he has both on rookie contracts. So, or at the end of, I guess Dobbins, the end of a rookie contract, but the last year of their contract, I should say. So, even starting next year, Khalil Herbert as the clear RB1 on the team, maybe at that point, Roschon overtakes him and Herbert's a cut, but then it's okay, Roschon and another rookie, either Spears or Ingram, that's your main starter. So I think that the contract on Waller could limit the ability to go get an RB1 next year in the auction. I think Lamar Jackson is the highest cap hit of any player in the league right now, but he's also the type of player that that's worth it. It's technically a little more money than Wilson, another 3-year contract or 3 years left on Wilson's contract. But I think you'd much rather pay a little bit more for Lamar than Wilson. So I don't view that contract as the reason this team might not be able to make moves. I think it really is the Waller contract. It does scare me that Ritter's the QB2. I did find it interesting they have Huntley for 3 years, but I think close to $9 million average, or just over $9 million average, I think, over those 3 years. That's a lot to pay for a backup quarterback. I get it because the upside, if Lamar ever went out, Huntley's got the skill set where he has a lot of upside as a backup quarterback. How long do you think? For the 3 years left on Huntley's contract, Foss, do you think Huntley will be on the Ravens still 3 years from now?
No, because he was restricted free agent this year.
Yeah.
So he
was on the exclusive tag. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a chance he walks,
and
I don't know if he's the kind of guy who's gonna get money somewhere else. Just because
he's probably just going to be another backup, right?
Right, and the fact is he's in that system. He's backed up Lamar. The team trusts him. Is the grass really going to be greener if he goes somewhere else? In Baltimore's proven time and time again that their guys kind of just fit their system and they don't get those chances.
So that might be a player to even just to cut next year, right? And save the, almost $5 million, the 4.7 million, whatever it be over the next 2 seasons, and at least use that to somewhat help the RB problem. If you cut Huntley, cut Khalil Herbert, that's probably 11 million saved for next year, and can that 11 million be the difference between getting a running back and not? So there are ways to potentially help that. But yeah, the Waller contract hurts, I guess. Beside Waller and Kincaid, every other tight end is just on a 1-year deal. And if that is your long-term tight end room with the potential to flex them, I guess, especially losing so many a lot of good starters this year, but there's a few, again, mentioned Mixon, Dobbins, Ayuk, all on the last years of their rookie contracts. And you maybe don't want to start Kincaid too much this year, but the thought next year in a tight end premium league, if you can't move Waller and you've got to start him, start both. Start Waller and Kincaid, and that's your tight end room. On their bye weeks, you're only playing one of them, but you don't really need a backup tight ends then. You can maybe afford that luxury this year, but spending $10 million on like you did, like Gerald Everett's contract, I wouldn't want to do that next year with having Waller on such a big contract. So this team can afford to just go with 2 tight ends and then build the depth everywhere else. Save that money that way.
Good call. All right, let's get to team number 7.
Number 7.
Number 7 was ranked as high as 6 and as low as 7. It is Jackie Moon. And Ryan, this is your team here.
This team has just superstars packed through it with McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Chubb, but they're also huge contract hits, which probably and that's probably the reason their quarterback room is just garbage.
Hey, there's 2 first overall picks at quarterback there. And Garoppolo might be better than both.
Yeah, that's a good point. Stafford and Mayfield over 1 overall, and then you got Garoppolo in the mix there.
That's 3 great cheap contracts to have, but I think Garoppolo is the only one they have next year, and who knows if he's a starter. I mean, if he is at his cap, and I think it's going to be I think it might be under $5 million next year. That'll be great to have that as a starter, but as your only starter is definitely scary for sure.
This team is all in right now. They're championship or bust with the ages of these guys. There's a few really awesome young pieces with Gibbs. I love the idea of Marvin Mims on the bench and Quentin Johnson, but man, it's old, it's expensive, and I don't know. You should be able to win with these quarterbacks, but it'll be close. Even Kelsey and tight end premium, like you're built to win now. They should have they should make a run at it now. And I don't know if they have cap space here. It doesn't say it on. Do they have any cap space left there, Kyle?
It should say that right at the top corner. You see, it says cap space on the screen.
Oh yeah, 1.5.
Yeah.
I don't have that screen. Oh,
You
No,
look
so
on
they're-
the restream screen.
oh, so yeah, they're broke.
Just about enough,
They're
yeah.
broke as a joke.
Well, 1.5.
Which-
That's enough to get you 3 minimum contracts. And I mean, to be fair, you can cut on this team Khalil Shakir, Paris Campbell, Allen Robinson. You cut all 3 of them right now. That saves 1.5 million and double your cap space just on. Oh, and James Robinson. That's a guy that's immediately cut, right? Like so there's 4 players right there that can be cut at no additional cost, and cut all 4, you save 2 million. You do have 4 open roster spots, but yeah, that could be. There are ways to save a bit of money at this point. And the other thing too is at any point you can put any player on injured reserve and you will save half their cap hit for the year. But unless your league has rules to allow them to come off, if you put a player on IR in an RSO league, they're on there for the rest of the year. So you can't just do it to temporarily save cap and bring them up. Again, our league, the league I'm in, we actually do that, but that's the commissioners manually control that. We've got to designate those players, and the default setting is IR is permanent for the year. So if you need to just save money on a big contract, usually if a player gets hurt, and can I save the cap hit?
That makes sense. Good point.
I've done that though, where before the auction, I'll throw a player on injured reserve instead of cut them because they have extra years, and I'll just save it for this year, and then just say like that player's a dead asset in our league. They no one's starting them, and they're still on my roster, but that's a decision to make kind of before the auction if you want to save money going into an auction.
So real quick, Kyle, let me make sure I clarify that. Do they have to be injured to go on IR, or can you just put literally anybody on IR?
You can put any player on injured reserve, which I think is the reason they make it so. Okay, but if you do it, you don't get them back.
That makes sense.
I remember I almost regretted that one year. CJ Anderson with the Rams. And when he was with the Panthers, he was barely being used. And I think I had a big cap hit on him. So I put him on injured reserve. He gets released, goes to the Rams. And then late in the season, it's like, I think I had Todd Gurley on the team. And then there was that one championship game where he was out. I could have used him. Luckily, I think I won anyway. The rest of my team, I think Zach Ertz went off crazy. And the rest of my team made up. Damian Williams. That one year where he was the fantasy playoff hero. But yeah, those you could regret it in theory. So yeah, be selective. And some leagues might also have a cap on number of injured reserve players. Usually there will be. So it can be used, but yeah, use it selectively. I've seen some people do it for like a Hassan Haskins, for instance. Like they don't want to cut him. Still a rookie contract, use it in future years. I mentioned that earlier, potentially cutting him. You do it more to save the roster spot than you do to save the cap space and not have to get rid of the player. I like doing it if, I've paid this player a little too much and I don't want to pay him all. Forget it. Even if he's usable as a starter this year, no one gets to start him.
Yeah, I think I had this team at 7, and when I look at this team, like Ryan mentioned, the top half of this team is phenomenal. Christian McCaffrey, Jefferson, Kelsey, Kupp, Chubb, Adams. But I feel like when you get down to the bottom there, if you have any kind of semblance of injuries whatsoever, you're putting guys in like some of the guys we mentioned. I mean, Dwayne McBride got cut from his own team. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Allen Robinson, Adam Thielen. I guess you got Bateman. Bateman's got a chance to be still good. Khalil Shakir got replaced by Deontay Hardy, Paris Campbell. So it's a tough bench. The start lineup is amazing. I think puts them in that win now mode for sure. But it's tough once you get past that starting lineup for sure.
And then again, like the last we talked about, a lot of those starters aren't going to be on the team next year. No contracts with Stafford, Christian McCaffrey, Travis Kelce, all of them on expiring contracts. So you've got some pieces like mentioned Garoppolo, Nick Chubb will still be there. The receivers will all be there. I think next year is Justin Jefferson's 5th-year option. So his cap hit will also go up drastically, though. Obviously, worth it because it's Jefferson. But yeah, so you still got those. Is there a chance this year if they're smashing that Cooper Kupp or Devontae Adams is tradable? I'd look to explore trading both, even if you could just get one traded. That helps your future cap in years from now.
Good point.
But you lose out on a lot of points, right? So that's again, some team would have to have enough cap space to be able to make that work. But I would explore trying to trade both Adams.
All right, let's get to number 6.
Number 6.
Number 16 ranked as high as 4 and as low as 7, which I think is the biggest disparity we've had so far. And this is Team Ringers. And Kyle, take it away.
Yeah, so this is maybe the first team where we can really talk about like multiple players next year for the 5th-year options. Because they've got Justin Fields and Mac Jones both on rookie contracts. So next year before the draft, it looks like Fields was the 107 and Mac Jones was the 110. So I believe that they're both eligible. Again, it would just be the first-round players eligible for this. But yeah, I think in theory could have both at, what did they say it was, $36 million for quarterbacks. I think that's worth it on Fields. I don't think I would do it on Jones, though. I don't know how you feel, Jeff, but I think that's how I would go. But I would put the option on Fields just to ensure that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, unless Jones, unless he really balls out this year, and I don't see that happening. I think it's definitely Fields, but I would do it, not Jones or Trey Lance for that matter, because he's also in that same rookie class.
Yeah, you know what? Yes, that was almost a no-brainer there too. Yeah. So $39 million for quarterbacks. So yeah, no to Mac Jones, and this is Trenton. I don't know if Trenton Laws is Ringers, and he's already telegraphing that for the rest of the league, or if that's just another manager seeing like, yeah, there's no way that Ringers is going to put that option. So notes for this team though after the 5th-year option. I guess part of what helps, and next year there'll be some benefit having 2 starting quarterbacks. I don't think Lance will be starting next year. But that's potential 3 quarterbacks on a rookie contract. Next year would be the last year to benefit from it. And there are opening cap space with Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins all on the final years of their contract. Calvin Ridley too, but he's still pretty cheap. So, but yeah, I think that'll open up a ton of cap space that they don't currently have, and kind of maybe rebuild some other positions. Maybe that's how they get another quarterback into that room as well. I've got an RSO team where it's Fields, Mac Jones, but I also have Kirk Cousins. And I like Mac Jones a lot more as a 3rd quarterback than I would.
Yeah, good point.
That might be, again, I think, is there a trade to make to have that happen this year? That might be tough. Maybe the Calvin Ridley contract is actually really tradable. Final year of a contract. So, teams trading for it would see it as a rental. They don't have future cap to worry about with him. It's still pretty cheap. So enough teams would be able to afford it. So that might be one to consider moving, but that's also probably this team's wide receiver. Someone was saying Ringers too low, Zachary was saying. So I guess the sentiment is this is a competitive team that could go far. Dallas Goedert at tight end, you have that difference maker. You have a contract to pay for, but stability with the there was another team earlier where it was, the contracts are parallel, like 2 years left on both tight ends, 3 years left on both tight ends in this case. Dallas Goedert, Irv Smith. I think there was Dalton Schultz, Hayden Hurst, and it feels really similar to that, where that second guy is expensive, but cheap enough. Oh, Ridley has 3 years left. I must have missed that. My bad. Well, okay, that does at least give them if Ridley smashes this year, that does give them a long-term wide receiver one. Because I was thinking there was a potential where, especially because you could release Hunter Renfrow next year. If things don't go well with the Raiders this year, he goes to a new team and not really seeing the targets, that might be cut next year. My fear was going to be you don't only have Jamison Williams under contract. So that would be really, really needing to all that money we talked about saving from Kamara, Cook, and Hopkins not being there. You have to just reinvest that all to wide receiver. At least Ridley gives a body under contract. But,
yeah.
Irv Smith's the guy I'm considering trading. 3 years left on the contract. Maybe someone wants that for the term, especially if he's doing well with the Bengals early, high-powered offense. Maybe there's a market for him, a bit like Hayden Hurst mentioned earlier. So, if I think whichever team wants to buy a tight end, they'll have kind of their pick of a few different teams with multiple tight ends at different price ranges that they can kind of make the cap hit work with. So for the teams that have those tight ends, it's to maybe be aggressive, be the one, go out, send offers. As go to the door-to-door salesman, don't let them go to the store where they get to pick who they want. Send them an offer first. Maybe that's how things get done.
All right. Anything you want to add to this team, Ryan? Here, anything that you saw that you liked or didn't like?
No. So there's some decent young guys on there. I love the Kendry Miller on the bench, but other than that, there's not a ton of young pieces I'm in love with on this team.
I like having James Cook, Miller, and Charbonnet. Like that's like at least 3 rookie running backs on rookie contracts to build the core around. But yeah, there's not that like true RB1 on the team next
No.
year when Kamara and Cook are gone.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to spend on it somewhere else. But there's it's another team other than Justin Fields, I don't think there's an elite asset. And that's why I was probably the lowest on it. Because a lot of times in fantasy football, you build your team around the stars and kind of build the rest around it.
Yeah, the stars win you games.
Because how many times you're going to have those young guys that are going to hit and blow up on those rookie deals, and you don't have stars, it's wasted.
Agreed. All right, let's get to team number 5.
Number 5.
Number 5 team ranked as high as 4 and as low as 7, and this team is Chalupa Batman. And Kyle, you're up again.
Yeah, so this team named Christopher Benjamin. I do wonder if the manager's name is actually Chris. That would be funny. I do get the league reference on the name. Love this league. Probably more than the actual show, the league. Love RSO. That's what we really want to see. So I guess I guess back to the 5th-year option talk. That's maybe an interesting way to start off. There's 2 players eligible for a 5th-year option next year: Devontae Smith and Javonte Williams. If I have it correct, it looks like Devontae Smith made it as a first rounder. I think he was the 111 in 2021. But yeah, in 2021 draft. So yeah, so I guess again it'll depend on what the amounts are per position. So I don't know if someone in the chat can, if they've already mentioned it, what the 5th-year options are on wide receivers and running backs.
Running backs are 25. They didn't say receivers.
Okay, running backs 25. Yeah. Trying to think. I guess based on the contracts in this league, there's some big ones at both positions. I would imagine running backs a little bigger though. Like that Barkley contract probably inflates it a little. So if it's anywhere close to 25, I think Devontae Smith is an easy pick. I think for a 5th-year option if you've got the cap space. Now, this one thing is a little bit like the Etienne argument with that Barkley team. Are you going to use the 5th-year option on a position where you're already heavily invested in? Big 3-year, or in some cases 4-year contracts on DK Metcalf, Deontay Johnson, and Tyreek Hill. Wide receivers a little less. So yeah, I think if you only have the cap space to 5th-year option 1, I think I would still go Devontae Smith pretty easily over Javonte. Maybe running back is scarcer and tougher to get in theory, but I don't know, just the player who Devontae Smith is. I would maybe make the cap space worth to get both. What do you guys think? Is there a better option, a 5th-year option between the two?
No, I was looking at the cap space that he currently has. It looks like he has about $9 million in current cap space. I don't know how much that sways things one way or the other.
Well, I mean, the 5th-year option will be in 2 years, right? So it's all about the future cap.
If I had to choose, it'd be Devontae Smith, just because wide receivers have more value and more longevity. Javonte Williams coming off an injury. I'd preferably keep both if I could, but it'd definitely be Javonte Smith. Why not dominate the wide receiver position and have that with your flex? You have 4 fantastic wide receivers that way, and you can kind of fill out around there. Running backs, you have Breece Hall is young enough. Like, you can fill that in. Running back is replaceable. It's the thing we've just seen in the league time after time again in real NFL.
A lot of depth at wide receiver, because on top of those, like if you were to pay Devontae Smith as a big 4, paid him alongside Metcalf, Deontay, and Tyreek, there's Zay Flowers, Rondale Moore, Wan'Dale Robinson still on rookie deals.
He says his plan is to extend both of them as long as they're not injured. So yeah, and it looks like it's $23 million for a receiver on a 5th-year option.
Yeah, so I think if the cap space is there, I think the one thing that helps is, unfortunately, though it's the problem, they don't have a quarterback under contract next year. Daniel Jones, Jared Goff looks like they're on expiring contracts. So now next year's cap hit isn't even when these 5th-year options would take place. It'll be 2025. So next year would be the year to kind of like to hone in on those quarterbacks in the auction. If Jones and Goff are both available, we'll know for sure them, and then maybe some other quarterbacks as well. Maybe some even better quarterbacks. It looks like they'll be available in the auction. So it'd be to go hard on them next year while you can. I suppose Akers and Tony Pollard are on expiring contracts, so you really go into an RB room next year with Breece Hall, Javonte, and Joshua Kelly. But if you solidify at wide receiver and you've got Andrews locked in long term, that makes the auction pretty easy next year. You're basically spending all your money on quarterback and running back, not worrying about any other position where the depth is already there. I guess the one thing is no backup tight end for Mark Andrews bye week, because the backup tight end is Isaiah Likely. So he's got the handcuff. But when that bye week comes, they will need to add a player.
Take that, Al.
But I think the thing to do there, I wouldn't go and trade for a tight end now. I looked it up, and the Ravens bye week is week 13, right? It's a pretty late bye week.
Yeah.
So that gives you basically 12 weeks of information to figure out who the best matchups are for tight ends. And you've got 12 weeks. You don't necessarily have to do it week 12, but you have that time to figure out that and pick up a tight end that you're looking at specifically for that matchup. You can wait to see like who's getting targets. And again, what the defensive matchups are to target that week 13. Go off that, maybe week 10, week 11, you can pick up that ideal tight end for free, like a minimum dollar contract that once that bye week passes, you can just drop them for free and there's no dead cap. That's probably how I would play it, because you're probably never going to, like any tight end you're picking up at the waivers, you're never going to start them over Mark Andrews. And if Andrews ever gets hurt, you're probably just playing Likely anyway. So that's not something that has to be addressed now. Because I'm looking at the minimum contracts, they've got Kenny Nwangwu, Gus Edwards, Leonard Fournette. You have time to wait to see if Fournette finds a team. But if he hasn't found a team by like week 10, 11, that's the player you cut for that tight end. Kenny Nwangwu, I don't expect much. It seems like his role in the team is more based on special teams.
Yeah.
Ty Chandler looks to be the main backup, so he could be someone that could also be released. I like Gus Edwards enough, and I'm sure Ryan would agree there too, especially with them getting rid of Melvin Gordon. It looks like that main backup to get the most carries.
Gus was never in question there.
Yes.
Well, I think it's more that, to me, I thought Gus was going to make the team. I'm actually surprised Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell both made the team. But my thought was Melvin Gordon is good enough that he'll eat into Gus Edwards' role. But now, like Justice Hill, as much as I did spend a first-round pick on him back in the day in an ill-advised attempt to really hone in on a running back, but he's never been as good as I've expected him to be. He's certainly never been good enough to take carries away from Gus Edwards. I don't think the UDFA Keaton Mitchell will as well. So Gus, to me, Gordon was talented enough to do that, but no one else will. So yeah, I love
Mitchell would play ahead of Hill.
Justice Hill. That's how
Hill.
I was on Justice Hill. Yeah.
Hill is there because he's great at special teams. That's why he's still on the team.
That's why I saw the appeal. But yeah, Gus Edwards, great contract to have him on a minimum contract, because as the potential fifth RB on this team this year, there might be weeks where he gets starter. So
Trenton says he's got one first rounder next year, because someone asked in the chat how his draft picks look there. So I don't know if it's his or not, but he definitely has at least one pick. All right, we ready for team 4?
Yeah, I think I went through everything I needed on that team. Yep.
All right.
Number 4.
Team 4 was ranked pretty flat, as high as 4, as low as 5, and it is Dad Life. Ryan, you know nothing about Dad Life, so break this team down, though.
No, it's great. Dude, I kind of mentioned before how you have to have your star players, and they have 2 superstars on their team, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, who, no matter what the rest of your roster looks like, long as they're breathing, they're going to keep you in matchups every single week. Like, they're going to put up that many fantasy points where you're kind of just filling it around it, which a lot of it did. Like, they have solid pieces. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, once he comes back, if he plays, gives you the RB1 in those weeks. Potential with those quarterbacks are in good shape. Rashad White should be a solid RB2. DJ Moore he's an RB2 for life, or wide receiver 2 for life, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think Swift's kind of in that same range. You have some questions with Burks and starting spot being he's hurt, and the upside with Dulcich is very fun. I like Hall on the bench to protect your Jonathan Taylor thing, which might end up working out well for you. Dante Foreman even has kind of upside. We mentioned 2 other Chicago backs. He wasn't bad in Carolina last year, and he could get some serious burn. Wide receiver wise, I like some of your bench receivers a good bit. Cortland Sutton with Judy out has high upside, and same with Juju without receiving core in New England being just a bunch of stinkers. This team, long as you fill in well with Mahomes and Allen, and hopefully Taylor, you're in good shape, man. There's gonna be a lot of wins. I don't know if it's fully going to win a championship. You're going to have to get on a hot streak, but you have the players who could get on that streak. And there's enough young guys. There's not a ton of young guys for the future, but just go all in.
Yeah, I
At this
think
point.
Mahomes and Josh Allen is an amazing combo. It's kind of like I'm sure everybody's seen those TikToks where they show the girl without the makeup and then it plays the music and then it flashes and then she has the makeup on. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes cover up a lot of things that go wrong with the roster. They're like the makeovers.
You just hope the makeup is from the night before, doesn't disappear by the championship game and you're disappointed in the morning.
Well, I was going to say, like, we probably don't have to worry about this, but I'm sure all of our partners in our life spend far too much money on makeup, not because like they're buying too much makeup, just because that stuff is so expensive. But that's really apropos because I think basically Mahomes and Allen count for half the cap hit for the next 3 years each, which is great because you don't really have to address quarterback. You can just throw in Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Matt Corral are already on the team. Like, it maybe upgrade on them a little bit, but honestly, like, it's just cheap guys. I'm even thinking of like all the leagues I've ever played in RSO. Like, I can't remember 2 players being paid that much on the same team. Like, we're talking, okay, the Lamar contract is so big, and I think that team had Waller as well, and that was extreme to a certain extent. But yeah, this is crazy. But again, it does allow a lot of upside, and you can put all the money elsewhere. They don't have too much spent at tight end. Only 2 tight ends on the roster: Juwan Johnson, Cole Kmet. Met at the last year of a rookie deal. Looks like Johnson, I think, has 3 years left. Fairly cheap, like even cheaper than Hayden Hurst, I believe. So that's someone where if you have to walk into next year with only Juwan Johnson on roster, I have my RSO team, which is converting to a tight end premium league next year. That's essentially the situation I'm going to be in with only him on a cheap contract. And he may not be up to par to everyone else's tight end one, but if he can get close enough to where you're getting advantages at every other position, like, Josh Allen is your QB2 there's no one else that can match that, really. I mean, I guess we're getting to a couple teams with some good quarterbacks, but for the most part, that's a huge mismatch advantage at that specific spot that'll cover up if you're not as strong at tight end. So, spend all the money. At this point, like next year's auction, any money they have is probably spent on running back. I guess they'll have Taylor on next year's 5th-year option, and then Rashad White on a rookie deal. Deontay Foreman still is a cheap year next year. But after that, they don't really have anything else. So running back depth next year might end up being a problem. All the amount of money they're spending on Mahomes, Allen might be the thing that prevents them from getting any good, decent RB depth.
Get good at drafting.
But can you also do things to free up some cap space? I'm looking at there's like 4 main receiver contracts next year that aren't rookie deals. So they've got like Romeo Doubs, Nico Collins, Treylon Burks. So you can backfill the team with that wide receiver depth. But they've got 4 guys next year: Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Cortland Sutton, Juju Smith-Schuster. And I'd look to try and move one. None of the Mike Evans is probably the one you're going to be able to move the least. He's got the largest cap hit, over 20 million average over 2 years. DJ Moore has a 3-year contract. Some teams might find that appealing because, okay, longer term, I'm investing, let's say it's draft picks, and I'm getting a lot more term out of that with DJ Moore. But other teams might see that as, okay, I don't want to spend future cap that much yet. So some teams might like DJ Moore for that. Other teams, you can cut Mahomes and save $35 million, of course. Yeah. What should he use the $35 million for? Well, Mahomes is available. Can I get him? But yeah, so some teams might like that extra year on DJ Moore. Other teams might actually prefer the 2-year contract on Cortland Sutton. So I'd look to see what kind of draft pick you can get for Sutton. Right now might actually be a great time to trade away Sutton because Judy's injury, there might be a lot of hype on him right now. If he goes out and he doesn't produce immediately with Judy out of the lineup, any trade value he potentially could have would be gone. So that might be a move I'd look to entertain right now. The one I'd want to hold on to the most is Juju. Under $7 million average for 3 years. That's a nice contract to have, especially if he's the top target on the Patriots. We saw how many targets they were giving Jacoby Myers, who, funny enough, is also on this team. That's a great contract to have, but that also might mean someone's willing to pay good, whether draft capital or another good contract back to get him. So he's the one I'd least want to move, but because of that, he's probably the one that would fetch the biggest result. So I'd look to try and trade one of those 4 wide receivers, and that way you're at least saving something. That's why I think Sutton's the one that screams to me. Try and trade away Sutton right now to maximize on the value. And you know what? And I did that too. And this is what I did with Sutton. I signed him the year he tore his ACL, and he was going to be like, I think I had Cooper Kupp on that team, but he was essentially like I was expecting him to be my wide receiver too. And bam, got one game out of him or whatever it was and tore his ACL. And that next off season, there was still hype on him. Like if you would have traded Cortland Sutton coming off the ACL tear, you're probably expecting a 2nd round pick. I heard that a lot. Like people were willing to, but contending team late 2nd, I'll give that up for Sutton on that chance. I gave him up for a 3rd. And my thinking was I specifically targeted, shout out to the Scott Fishbowl Podathon. It was a league with Sal Lito. And Sal had the most cap space that year by like a wide margin. And I ended up selling Sutton to him for a 3rd. And my thinking was I'm underselling the value, but I'm putting this receiver's cap hit on the specific team I would most want it to be on. It increases his caps, lowers mine, so then suddenly we were a lot closer. And I remember Antonio Gibson was the big player in the auction that year, and I wanted him so bad, and so did Sal. It turned out pretty big, and I think if I hadn't made that move initially, Sal probably would have won Gibson that year. And Gibson did all right, especially that year. He had the shin splints. Once he came back from that bye week, he was actually killer. Good, he helped me on a playoff run, and I ended up winning the league that year. And that difference might have been the cap hit I was able to save. The player I got for the 3rd, honestly, I think it was Nico Collins, which is funny enough is on this team. Whatever I got out of Nico Collins was less relevant than the cap space I saved. And again, with a direct competitor. So sometimes even underselling the player, you get a pick back that, well, this player should be worth a 2nd, but you only get a 3rd. Sometimes it's just not having the cap space. That's the biggest benefit. And if you get a 3rd, that's bonus almost.
Kyle's out here playing chess and they're all playing checkers. He's trading Sutton to get.
And I remember later that year, Sal was excited when we got to the draft. I'm like, where's my 3rd? Why didn't I have a 3rd? And then I was like, oh no, you gave it to me for Sutton, and he was excited about it. So Sal still felt like he won. I think he went far that year too, so he benefited from it. But I got more benefit of it just being on his team, regardless of how many points he scored with Sutton.
Right, good call. Yeah. All right, let's get to team number 3.
Number 3.
Number 3 team ranked as high as 2 and as low as 3. I've noticed that a lot of these were pretty much on par for most of these teams. We're pretty much in agreement on most of them. They're pretty flat. This team is To Infinity and Bijan. And Kyle, now you just talked for a good while, so now you get to do it again here. This is your squad.
Well, I was gonna say you got to introduce that better. To Infinity and Bijan. Like you got to really stretch the Bijan there. Like those long runs he's going to have. You got to really make a long run on that A. But yeah, honestly, Bijan, 4 years left on his rookie contract, might be one of the most, if not the most appealing player to have. I'd imagine he was the rookie 101 this year. But just knowing that, like, again, I think, and this was mentioned in the message that the league sent us, quarterback you would devalue slightly based off a normal league, right? I draft Patrick Mahomes and start if I get him for the life cycle of this league. That's not always the case. So if you're looking at like 4 years max, that like these are the 4 years you'd want Bijan, and to have him market value, he's making like 25% of what Saquon Barkley's making. To have that value at a running back is so huge. To have that, or any young producing player is so huge that he might be like the most valuable contract in this league at this current moment, or if not the most valuable, certainly one of the most valuable. So this team just having that, hence why they're so excited, putting in the team name makes sense. But that will certainly help them. Like the running back room this year is great. Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, Najee Harris, Bijan Robinson, 4 hammers that you're smashing. No Eckler and Henry next year, but then that also might help the cap space, because as impressive as those 4 running backs are, the quarterback trio of Jalen Hurts, Geno Smith, Brock Purdy, that's a ton of production this year. The biggest downside of this team, why it might not even make the difference, why it's not 2 or 1, this is Jalen Hurts last season and late draft pick, no 5th-year option. There was no way to get him beyond this. So the one thing, To Infinity and Bijan, that might be what they have to spend next year to get Hurts back in the auction. I'd imagine he's going to be the prize piece in the auction. We've talked about so many teams. Save up money for the quarterback. Everyone's going to be going after Hurts. So the advantage is not having Brandon Cooks on the cap for next year. Some players like that, again, expiring with the running backs, Eckler, Henry, himself, you essentially just pool it all together to try and get Hurts, or make the decision to just ride with Geno Smith, Brock Purdy. That's the decision that's going to have to be made next year. We don't have to worry about that this year. If for whatever reason this team isn't contending, I do wonder though on last year of Jalen Hurts' rookie contract, if you wanted to sell him, you could probably get a haul even for a rental player. I think we expect this team to compete though, so this team is probably just. I think what we would all do is just ride Hurts out.
Yep.
Like just try and win a champ with him this year, and if you don't get him in the auction next year, then so be it. At least you won a title.
They said Tua got traded for Purdy and Musgraves in the third, so they have Tua as their starting quarterback and Geno on the bench.
Really? Okay.
That's a legit contender. Like they're making a run this year.
Yeah.
Even without that, but that is nice.
Yeah.
And then I guess the talk of the 5th-year option. This one is interesting. So I think first off, Chase at $23 million. Yeah, I think you easily take that. Now, because I'd imagine you have to make that decision before the auction. The only reason I wouldn't do it is knowing that future cap it in 25, is that what prevents me from getting Hurts that year? Probably not. Like I think I would still, and yeah, Tua would be in the final year of his rookie contract. So. It's almost okay. So this team is has really gone in on that. Geno Smith, Jalen Hurts, and Tua. I think that's who. Yeah, to infinity. So having 2 quarterbacks on expiring contracts, it's great for this year because it's cheap enough to get both Hurts and Tua with Geno. Like playing the matchups between the 3 is great this year. But yeah, next year only having Geno might be a little scary. But yeah, I think Chase. This team actually has 3 potential players for the 5th-year option. 2025. So Jamar Chase, Najee Harris, and Kyle Pitts. And I think Chase is an obvious one. I don't know about the other 2 though. What do you guys think?
So Kyle Pitts is a potentially yes for me. Harris definitely not. I don't think I would pick up a 5th-year option on Harris, but Pitts is definitely one I'd have to really think long and hard about because everybody's still valuing him as a top tight end, and if he has that breakout season, that 5th year could be worth it.
Wait, didn't you say Eckler and Henry down after this year?
Yep, for sure.
Then you definitely pick up the 5th-year option on Harris and Pitts because if you let Harris walk, you have Bijan and no other running backs.
I guess the one thing is they could win running backs in the auction next year, but you're going to have to make that decision on Harris before you know that. So,
but how many running backs are going to be in the auction better than Najee?
Well, you're going to have Austin Eckler or Derrick Henry, for instance, right?
Fair.
This team is losing. But
who are old as shit, though, and you don't
exactly
want to
right. Like, yeah. So I could see the argument on putting the 5th-year option on all 3, but that will be something where again that 2025 cap hit on all 3 of them, that might, I suppose it's a good thing that Hurts is up for like the auction this next coming year because that 2024 cap hit won't be affected by those 5th-year options, so you might be able to still win Hurts. Whereas it might be tougher to win players in the auction in 2025. So it might time out well. So I guess the idea of whether you go in on Hurts or not probably shouldn't change the 5th-year options too much. But I think it's just each of those 3 players individually. It'll be because I noticed they do have Jalen Warren as well, who I think is basically making the same as Najee Harris in this league for both years. But yeah, I guess the one thing, if they do pick up the 5th-year option on Kyle Pitts, it would really motivate me to want to sell Chigakonkwo. That's a pretty good contract for 4 years. I think the average is just under $7 million. So, there's bigger tight end contracts on players that maybe have less hype than Chig. So I do wonder if to sell Chig would motivate me more to pick up that 5th-year option on Kyle Pitts. Now, if you're thinking Chig is the long-term option, I might actually consider selling Pitts now and let someone else deal with that 5th-year option decision next year. And you just focus on Chase and Harris. So that could also be a potential option as well. I would look, again, a lot of these teams, it's to try and manipulate the tight ends. I think the ultimate goal of who's buying tight ends, right? We're getting to that in a sec here, I think.
All right. You want to go ahead and get into that next team? Is that I didn't look ahead.
I talked about everything I need to. Is there anything either of you wanted to mention about this team?
No, I think you covered everything.
Well,
yeah, you covered everything I was gonna talk about. And the Jalen Hurts thing's interesting because you're right. I was like, why doesn't he have a 5th-year option? Because he wasn't a 1st-round pick, right? So it does affect things. I remember
when people hated him and we're done.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
wasn't even a first-round pick in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
If the Packers took Jordan Love in the first round, I wonder how that works.
Well, we'll see.
Verdict's still out on that one. All right, let's get to
Find
number
out
two.
this year.
Number 2.
Number 2, ranked as high as 3 and as low as 2, and ironically, it is just the two of us. And Ryan, this is your squad to break down here.
Just real quick before Ryan gets that, so the tight end 5th-year option could be as low as 18 million, especially if it's near that. I guess that makes it easy to go just Chase and Pitts, and because I think they mentioned that running back would be the most expensive of the three. So yeah, I guess especially close to that 22 million, where you're essentially spending the same on Chase as you are on Pitts. That's where I could get to the argument where maybe that's just a little too much for a tight end. I mean, there's some. I mean, Darren Waller's making more than that, so I guess it's not that bad in comparison to that.
He'd have the return wide receiver value in order to pay that amount, I think.
Yeah. Again, it's like we know Chase will do that, but if we're not sure, again, it's the idea of with these 5th-year options, especially if you have the luxury of having Chase, I could see the strong argument. Some people might say, "Oh, Pitts is so good that you would do it no brainer," but I could see the argument for not doing it.
Good point. All right, Ryan, break this team down. Just the two of us.
Dude, I love this team. They have such a nice blend of young talent and vets who are still young enough where they're going to be relevant for the foreseeable future. One, you have 2 top 12 quarterbacks here, one on the rookie deal with Anthony Richardson, and Trevor Lawrence has 2 years left on his, which should be huge. I'm sure you're going to pick up his 5th-year option, no matter what it is, because he's a top 7 quarterback.
Yeah, 36 million. I'd pay that for Lawrence.
Yeah,
for sure.
And he's got the potential to be the QB1. Like, he's that talented. They build around him. AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, same thing. Garrett Wilson, rookie deal, 3 years left. You'll obviously pick him up when he comes. And I believe Jahan Dotson's going to be, again, huge year, especially with McLaurin out. You get that bonding with Howe because they came in together. It's a nice young core. Even in their bench, they have the upside with like Kadarius Toney. If he gets healthy, the upside a chain. They brought Luke Musgrave in as a backup as a young tight end who could be very, very good in Green Bay. To go with Gesicki, I know you alluded to hating their tight ends. I think Gesicki in that terrible receiving group has potential to be number 2 in targets in New England. It surprised a lot of people this year. So I don't hate it compared to everything that's around there with Jacobs and Sanders' vet running backs.
That's true.
Yeah, James Conner's another starting running back on your bench. Christian Kirk was 1,000 yards last year on your bench. Kadarius Toney, if healthy. I like this team a lot.
Yeah, this team is built really well from top to bottom. At least even beyond just the contracts. Just looking at the team from a perspective of like how I would build my roster in Dynasty, and this is very much how I would build it. I mean, he's got a good mix of young guys and some vets that are still valuable. He's got some great young receivers, which I always like to have young receivers in my Dynasty leagues. Running backs are solid. He's got some good bench depth as well. I mean, it's built really well.
You literally have 2 top 5 receivers, top 7 quarterback, top probably 9 quarterback. Dude, there's a lot of good pieces on this team.
And just to talk about the way it's built, well, yeah, I don't love Mike Gesicki because, I mean, Ryan's not wrong. He has that potential, but he has just as much potential to be the number 2 tight end on the team, where Hunter Henry is still clearly ahead of him. And it's just super limited as he's the 6th option on the team in targets. I think that's a possibility as well. But what I like about Mike Gesicki is the minimal investment made on him. This was nominated him in the auction and no one bid him up, so you got him free essentially. If Mike Gesicki really is clearly behind Hunter Henry, he's the easiest player to cut in the world. And I absolutely love building tight end rooms like that. If you can allow me to do something like that and literally just roster 1 tight end on a minimum contract, I love it. I hated the name when I saw it, but just the way that's built, that's perfect because what it allows is to spend so much else everywhere else. And getting guys like Wilson on a rookie contract is good, but then being able to spend up on AJ Brown's contract, which I think he's got 4 years. They just won him this year in the auction, so this year it showed. Spend as little as you can at tight end to be able to go after elite assets like AJ Brown. They had the luxury of having before, I would have said before the trade, the best QB trio to have. Maybe not necessarily the best QB trio in points this year, but like I would rather have this QB trio, 3 guys, all on rookie contracts. Yes, Tua was at the end of his rookie contract, but still having Lawrence, Tua, and having the luxury of being able to not have to start Richardson right now if he's not producing. Perfect. Certainly, I had a strong case to put this team at number 1, to be honest, for a while. And I think next year, now it's Brock Purdy's on the team, so that does give that assurity of having the 3 quarterbacks under contract next season, which is nice. Although a lot more of a cap hit than what Tua was getting this year. But there are moves that they can make to save money next year. I'm thinking of Darnell Mooney. I think it'll be like just around a $17 million cap hit next year. That's a guy I think I would cut before the auction. I think it was fine to hold him this year. You had the luxury of the 3 cheap quarterbacks that you could afford to have guys on bigger contracts like Mooney. But I think next year, before the final year of his contract, that's a good year, I think, to cut him. Maybe there was a thought of cutting him even this year, but I think it was fine to test him out. Let's see what he does in this offense with DJ Moore as the number 1 receiver. But if he doesn't get good results this year, I think he's an easy cut next year before the auction. And then there's potentially like $8.5 million saved that could be used. James Conner, we'll see what the situation is next year. If he's not in a situation next year where we think he's getting tons of carries, you cut him for another $7-8 million. Maybe even Miles Sanders. Like if it really doesn't go well in Carolina this year and they're already looking for another running back, or it looks like a 50-50 split, they bring in a rookie, let's say next year, that's highly drafted. And that could be another guy that's cut, and there's another $9 million that opens up. So you can just even just those 3 players. Josh Jacobs, 3 years left on his deal. It's kind of like the Barkley contract, a little bit less of a cap hit, but for that 3rd year in 2025 before the auction, that might be cutting Josh Jacobs, especially if that year you're taking up the 5th-year option on Trevor Lawrence. Maybe that's how you finance that 5th-year option, is just save what you can on Jacobs that year. You get 2 more solid years of production out of him and cut him then. So this team is well built, and I mentioned could trade for a tight end. It seems like they've done that with Luke Musgrave. But again, it's trade for a tight end on a rookie contract. They weren't, like I mentioned earlier, okay, can you get someone to buy Darren Waller's big contract, or even they probably weren't even going to be willing to get like a Hayden Hurst type contract. It seems like they want to spend as little at tight end as possible. So while it on the surface seems like they should be the team that wants to trade for a tight end, they've also said they're not going to put a lot of money in tight end and so they'll trade for a tight end on a rookie contract, but not anything more than that. So I think that move, because I would have suggested maybe go after an Irv Smith. Like that would be a team where
I'd rather him than Irv Smith.
Well, yeah, and I think especially at what you're getting, or you'd rather Mike Gesicki straight up.
Oh, I was talking about Luke Musgrave.
Well,
I'd rather have him. I'd rather have him than a lot of those other tight ends.
And I'd rather have the Luke Musgrave on the rookie contract just because he's on the rookie contract over a lot of these tight ends.
I'm talking just as a player.
But you're right, straight up too. So that makes sense to go after and make that trade there. So that, again, losing Tua would make me, okay, did I put them 3 instead of 2? But then again, they've kind of upped their tight end a little bit. So I think we're totally still justified in ranking them at number 2.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's get to the final team tonight.
Number one.
Number 1 team was ranked by all of us as the number 1 team, and it is simply the football team. And Ryan, this is your squad here to close us out.
Remember I said, like, again, when that team with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, you have to be really good at drafting when you have that caliber quarterbacks. This team has just nailed rookie drafts year after year. Like, you have so many superstars on this team who run first-year contracts and just blew up. Like, Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Rondre Stevenson. I think Herbert's still on that. You have Dameon Pierce, who's going to get carries. Brian Robinson starting running back. Dude, like Drake London. This team is absolutely loaded. Their bench is better than some of the lower team starting lineups. And
like,
even like this,
it was taken over. This is a rookie owner that took over this team. So what a team to take over, right?
Oh, well, whoever had it before, kudos to them for building this team the way they did, and congratulations for taking this team over, because this team is stacked. And they're young, they're talented, it has so much upside. Even like your tight ends with Michael Mayer, Trey McBride as young options. I think Evan Ingram has top 5 potential at the position. dude, like they haven't missed in their drafts. Who was there before? They said Nate crashed rookie drafts. They're not lying. This team's loaded, man, and
Well, it
it's
looks
going to be
like
good for a foreseeable future.
Oh, I apologize. Tua was the rookie owner.
oh,
It was a lag comment, so he was a little bit behind us. So yeah, the Tua team was the rookie owner. This guy's still in the league. Still
kudos to the
Well,
Tua
I mean,
guy, but this
that
dude
means
is
that
really wild.
means they won AJ Brown, right? So they've made some moves to add to that team. I guess I was wondering, like the team that named their team after Tua, like I know he's on the last year of a rookie contract, but I was a little surprised to hear that they traded, but this isn't his natural team. So yeah, but yeah, making again the smart decision to just go for a minimum tight end in the auction and then be able to like cut him at, and not have any dead cap. That's super smart. So like some just specific auction moves that they made, even if it's just those two moves, AJ Brown and a minimum tight end. I love that.
So Kyle, real quick, Ryan just went over all the good things about this team. Is there anything on the backside contract wise that's on the negative side, or is this team pretty much built perfect?
I mean, he complimented Evan Ingram. I don't love the contract though. 2 years, I guess like about $18 million per year. Especially having Hawkinson already, that's a lot of money in tight end, and I don't know that Evan Ingram is enough of a difference maker to be flexed either. So that's the one kind of dark spot on this team.
Well,
Everything else,
you don't got to flex it on this team though.
On this roster, you definitely ain't flexing.
Like,
sure.
Yeah, this roster
Yeah.
you don't have to flex it. There's a lot of rosters you'd have to.
So that's the one thing where, I mean, like this roster is so solid that clearly that cap hit this year didn't affect its ability to be competitive. But again, a lot of that is based on so many, like their entire running back core is just rookie contracts. That's a dream, to be honest. And then I mentioned the QB trio of Burrow, Herbert, and Watson. 50-year option already picked up on Burrow, but this is Herbert's last year. So next year in the auction, you've got Hurts and Herbert both in the auction. So like that's two big name quarterbacks that will be available. Does the football team, they have enough rookie contracts. They might be able to have enough cap space to do it. But with Watson already on the team, if they don't get either of those two, do you just, okay, I've had a bunch of rookie contracts at running back. Do I add a vet running back in there?
Bro, just get Herbert back and just keep nailing the draft.
That would be the ideal thing, I
Like,
think. Yeah, if you can, or even just Hurts instead of Herbert. But if you can have that solid QB trio for years, it's going to be expensive. You've only got, I mean, you only have it for one more year because then Burrow would have to be a free agent the next year. So I do wonder if they also potentially save for that. Like if they don't go big on a quarterback in 24, but they go big to try and get Burrow back after his 5th-year option. I guess that would be the 26 auction.
Yeah, I think he's got an extra, 26.
Or no, Burrow is a Herbert class. So yeah, the 5th-year option's already been picked up on Burrow. So that's already locked in for 24. So like Burrow would be eligible in the 25 auction. I wonder if they go more for that. Like they don't go in big in on Hurts or Herbert and they go for Burrow instead. Or you go in big for Hurts and Herbert, knowing that you're going to just have Burrow just for the extra year and you let him walk in 24 because you've already have the other two, Watson, and whether it's re-signing Herbert or getting Hurts. So there's plans there for sure. But yeah, if I'd try and move the Ingram contract, it might be tough to move. I'd consider cutting him next year. If that $9 million you'll be able to save from him, if that helps you get a quarterback, I think that's worth it there. So that might be a player to cut next offseason. I don't think there's much point doing it now the auction's already passed. And you wouldn't even save anything anyway because the auction's already passed. You could, in theory, put him on, like he'd be the type of player I'd consider putting on injured reserve if, okay, I need to make a trade and I need that $9 million extra somehow. Like if I got to throw Ingram on injured reserve knowing I've already got Hawk in the lineup, this is the type of team that could afford to do that. Like most teams probably wouldn't be able to afford to put a good player like Ingram. He'd be the tight end one on a few of these teams here. This team probably could.
He'd be the receiver one on a few of these teams too.
Yeah, that KJ Osborne team, right? So that might be a move to make this year. If you need that $9 million somehow, that's the one guy that stands out to me that you could just put him on injured reserve and it's not hurting the composition too much of this team.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something that I would have to get used to. I don't do contract leagues, and listening to you talk about them, I feel like I may have to get in one next year at some point because I'm definitely willing to try this out. It seems it's interesting because looking at it from a dynasty way and then looking at the contracts on the backside definitely change your perspective a little bit. So that's a really cool feature of it.
I just love auction drafting too, and this ensures you're not just doing a startup auction where it's okay, we do the auction at the startup and then that's it, no more auctions the rest of it. This you get auction every year, and it could be like you might have auctions where like some years it sucks, like there's no good players But it seems like this is a league again with no franchise tagging. I don't even know if there's like in-season extensions because I haven't really seen any contracts that look too outrageous like those. So with just the 5th-year option, like this is a type of league that ensures there's going to be more players available in the auction. I love that.
Good stuff. All right, that wraps the podcast up, gentlemen. I want to thank you in the chat.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
there was one last thing on this team. I think this is the team with Waddle, right? So like Jalen Waddle as a 5th-year option does make a lot of sense too. But again, that'll be that 2025 auction. Is that the auction where you want as much money as possible for Burrow? That would be the only reason I would not do it. But I think Waddle, because I think if I calculated correctly or looked at the spreadsheet properly, he was the 112, so he just makes the cut for having that
5th-year option.
So
there shouldn't be a Tyreek Hill at that point, or maybe there will be, but according to
even
Tyreek
with Hill, he smashed last year, so I think he just earns targets regardless of who else is around him. At that point, you're not going to have Amon-Ra on the team anymore. He won't be eligible for 5th-year option, so the receiving core at that point will basically just be Diggs, Drake London still on his rookie deal, and then you'll have a 5th-year option on Waddle. So to get that third wide receiver in, I think it makes a lot of sense to pick up that 5th-year option.
Good stuff. All right, guys. Thank you all in the chat, and thank the league in general for your purchase. I hope you enjoyed the podcast tonight. This was the first year we did these ones live, so you got to interact with us directly instead of listening to it after the fact. So hopefully you enjoyed that.
I enjoyed it because it gave us context, like those 5th-year option amounts and other things like the draft picks. Like
100%.
Just in general, I loved it, but I especially loved it. I mean, I loved this PLP more than anything just because it's RSO.
Yeah,
I love talking contracts.
I wish I had gone live sooner. We've been doing this. I think it's our 3rd year doing it. I wish I had gone these live sooner because
Seems like the league, the people who pay for it enjoy it too. Even if other people are listening in, they don't seem to mind that it's not so private, that it's personal but not private, because it allows that extra interaction. We enjoy it. It seems like they enjoy it. So yeah, super good.
Good stuff. I will plug the PLPs one more time. Going for 2.com/PLP. Use promo code earlybird24 and save 20%. If you want to go ahead and book for next year, you could do that. Real quick, guys, we'll go around the room. Kyle, give us your Twitter handle where these guys can follow you at, ask you questions about contract leagues, whatever they want to do. Give them you what you're doing this season as well.
Yeah, so I guess a good bulletin board material. So if you want to reach out and tell me where I was wrong in all this analysis, for sure, I'm on Twitter or X or whatever it's called, which apparently Jeff is now named. Like that is the name of the app. Those 7 words. I love that. So that's what we're going to call it from now on. But yeah, I'm at Senra Says. Probably say the handle before I ramble.
Yep. And
Monday night pregame show, as Jeff mentioned earlier, here on the Going for Two Live Network. We go live, I would say every Monday at 7, but I know there are a couple of, like week 2, week 3, there's doubleheader games that start at 7:15, so we might be going earlier than we haven't fully discussed. But every Monday should expect something from week 1 probably through week 15. We do a lot of props for Monday night. When we have Dr. James Ferretti on, we'll talk injuries a lot with him. But when it's just myself, Gladys, and Dan, the B League says, we'll a lot of like waiver priorities for players, recapping the results from Sunday, as well as, again, of course, previewing Monday night. In terms of the stuff I do for Full Press coverage, I've got 2 podcasts: Full Press Fantasy Pod, Full Press Packers Pod. In season, the Fantasy Pod will go once a week, just doing weekly previews. I'll do occasionally extra episodes, like would be relevant for, say, the team with Mike Gesicki, just the 2 of us, or whatever the team name's going to be now that 2 is not on anymore. I probably will do a podcast on the Full Press Fantasy Pod probably after I record that Monday night pregame show, honestly. Probably, either halftime Monday night or just after Monday night game, and it'll recap all the targets tight ends got week 1, because I find that the tight ends that earn targets week 1, for the most part, will earn targets through the season. Last year, Kylan Granson got 7 targets week 1. That turned out to be a fluke. I think the year before, James O'Shaughnessy had like 6 or 7 week 1. So there's one guy that'll usually be a fluke, but for the most part, those week 1 target getters continue to do that through the season. So for someone like the team with Mike Gesicki, like I wouldn't even hesitate. If week 1, Hunter Henry's ahead of him, no hesitation, drop him for someone else that's getting more targets than Gesicki.
Yeah.
And that's my advice in a lot of leagues with tight ends, but certainly for someone like this, who like that, just the 2 of us team who spend so little on tight end, I find that super valuable, because that's the keys you're looking for. That's the reason you want Gesicki on a minimum contract, because you can cut him immediately with no repercussions. So I'll occasionally do stuff like that, but again, Full Press Fantasy Pod once a week. The Full Press Packers Pod, that's more for Packers fans. Game previews, game recaps, we'll usually do 2 a week there. I do a couple articles for Full Press Coverage as well, fullpresscoverage.com. Usually my rankings, which you can also find on goingfor2.com. That'll be just not my rankings, but everyone, our weekly consensus rankings. If you want to just isolate to my dynasty, my weekly rankings, my redraft rankings right now at fullpresscoverage.com. I also do the goal line guide every week, which is my way of trying to predict touchdown output on a week-to-week basis. I'll usually start at week 5. I like to get a month worth of data before I actually start using it. And then from there, I'm looking at defensive efficiency inside the 5, which teams allow the most touchdowns inside their own 5-yard line, which offenses score the most. I go through ESPN play-by-play for their box scores after every game, and I'm tracking every play inside the 5, and I just use it as my bank of information every week to kind of cross-reference the matchups. What does this offense do against this defense? And use the over-under Vegas totals as well to try and come up with a goal line grade for every team to kind of say where I think the likeliest possibility of touchdowns come from. Not just which teams, but how those teams are going to score.
Kyle, when do you sleep, man?
All right.
After I do all that work. But but that's literally all the work. So I just spilled it all out. But yeah, there's not much else I'm doing beside that. Then there's nothing else.
And then he'll also be in every single chat room of all of our podcasts too. Somehow, I don't know how he does it, but you can find Kyle everywhere. Speak on it on Tuesday nights. I'm usually doing waivers while I'm watching them because it's Tuesday night, and it's like, okay, that's like an hour and a half show. Sometimes that's my hour and a half I'll spend on all the waivers in all my leagues. Like, it does coincide, right? Like some of this is why I'm on YouTube so much, listening to all these podcast videos because I'm doing so much fantasy work and I can double dip on them. That's probably why I do so much of both. Good stuff. Ryan.
Cool. I had no idea where to go. Find me on Twitter, Foss534, I refuse to call it X. Find me at Going for Two, the Armchair Fantasy Show with Jeff every Wednesday night, and find me over at the Dynasty Big Board podcast. Comes out Wednesday mornings where we talk everything Dynasty and just have some fun and talk, just talk some football. And that's about it. I'm nice and simple. I don't do much.
Good stuff. As always, once again, guys, thank you for your purchase. We hope you make another purchase next year. Me and Ryan will be back to our regular show at this time, 9:30 p.m. starting next week. It'll be the week 1 kickoff. We have a great guest on our first show, Rum Boys Robbie. If you're a fan of Rum Boys Network, he'll be on for our week 1 to help us kick it off. He's full of energy.
I'm gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, Ryan's gonna be.
Robbie gets me riled up.
Yeah, so it'll be a fun show, guys. So yeah, next week, 9:30 p.m. right here on the Going for Two Live Network. Thank you all. For Kyle, for Ryan, I'm Jeff, and we will see y'all hopefully next year, and good luck this season.